So I'd like to introduce you this evening to our panelists. We have Maggie O'Sullivan, who's a life coach, and we work together to deliver the Non-Violent Resistant Programme. We have John Lonergan here. He's well known for being on TV and the television and for writing a book on parenting and being the governor of Mount Joy. I suppose a topic that interests an awful lot of us to wonder what it's like. And so then we have a parent as well. We have Karen Carney here with us. She's a parent graduate of the programme, and she's here tonight to share her experience with us. So I'd like to welcome you all. Thanks very much for joining us. And in the background, we have Edmund, who's doing he's under the name of Maggie O'Sullivan Graham. We all seem to be because of difficulties, but he's doing our technical assistance for the night. So our format for the night is we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation just on information in relation to the Non-Violent Resistant Parenting Programme. It's a 10-week programme. Then we have Karen is going to talk to us about her experience of the programme. Then we're going to have John is going to do a talk, and hopefully we'll finish off just with a bit of interactive chit chat about everything parenting in general. Now, at the end, we'll leave 10 minutes for questions and answers as we go through.
We might have used them already.
Yeah, we might have. Well,
we might have used them up now at this stage.
Yeah, well, we will stay on an extra half an hour to give the time that we allotted for it. If people can't stay, then we can have the recording will be live anyway on YouTube for people to look back on. We'll have to get it clipped and cut for all the bad start that we had. We will leave Edmund at that. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please post them in the comment section in the Facebook page. And Edmund is going to relay them to us in the chat box. And if we can answer them throughout the session, we will. If not, we'll try and get to them afterwards. And if we don't get to everybody's questions in the time, I'll guarantee that we will respond to them in time by email or in the comment in the group. We will look at them because your interest in the programme and your interest in coming to these programmes and webinars to support your children is of interest to us. So we will follow up with that. So if everybody's okay, I'm going to attempt.
Take a big deep breath now, Margaret.
Yes, I'm going to attempt a screen share. Now, I have done this numerous times, but then again, we did practice during the week and things didn't work out. And
looking good so far.
I'm yes. So we have got our slideshow.
We have. Aren't we looking lovely?
And I'll go back to the beginning again. There, we all just look lovely. Now, so again, it's a non-violent resistant parenting program. It's our next program will be online. We're starting on the 18th of the 3rd, 2021. It's a 10-week program online via Zoom, and there's 2 booster sessions following it. It starts at 7:30 to 9 on Thursdays, and the numbers are capped at 16. We keep our numbers small because it's far more it's far better, and we can give more intensive support to the people that attend it. So we've a minimum of 2 facilitators for each program, and prior to the program, the non-violent resistant parenting workbook will be emailed. And if you have interest in joining the program or booking a place on it, you can phone me at that number, or you can go on my website, margaretgilbertlifecoach.com. So I'm just going to let you have a look here. There are 10 sessions. So that just gives a brief overview of what each session covers. And the review session, it's phone calls, or what we do are booster sessions where we have 2 more online sessions a month each apart. So we look at how things have gone in the interim for parents and to see if anything needs to be tweaked or rejigged to keep things moving forward for the family.
Could I jump in here for a minute, Margaret? Just to say that you'll see there that it's 10 sessions, and session 5 is the announcement. So the first 5 sessions are the parents getting ready to start making changes. They're looking at the situation in the home, what needs to change, what are they ready to change, what are they able to change, choosing where to start, and sort of gathering their tools and strategies and getting the legs under them really and getting ready to make changes. And then in session 5, that's the beginning of the active part, isn't it? Where they tell their child or children that they've made a commitment to change things in the family.
Yeah, so that's huge. We'll come back to it again another bit.
Yeah.
Down, and anyone that has information or wants to add something, John, Carden, jump in, because it's interactive. We want to get the best out of it we can. So again, we ask parents to come to a session like this to see if they're ready to commit to the program. Are you ready to invest in yourself and your family, and to decide if the program is for you? Because it is 10 sessions, 1.5 hours, 2 booster sessions. There are plenty of homework tasks, including feedback in sessions. And you as parents are asked to bring with you your expertise and knowledge to the group to support other parents. And work is with the parents, changing your behaviour, how you react and respond to challenging situations. So when we change our behaviour, it has impact on the whole system, which brings about change. So it's a systemic approach. Change part of the system and it all begins to change. It's a financial commitment as well, and it requires absolute commitment to the confidentiality of the group. When you come to that group, we are very privileged as professionals that families come and share the very intimate details of their family home, how things are good, how things are not good. And we give 100% commitment that all families' information stay within the group. They're not discussed outside of it. And all families that enter the program, they're asked as well, if they're talking about their own part in the program, that's grand, but they must commit to the confidentiality of the rest of the program participants. They can't share other people's information from it. So
yeah, 'cause we all have to feel safe.
Yeah, it's a safe and respectful environment in which the most intimate details from families may come to light, and we really, really respect that. So what we're looking at in the program is active resistance, actively choosing not to respond. So it's actually a very powerful thing that when we're in any conflict situation, that we can decide how we're going to respond, or are we going to react to it. So some people would say, then if we don't respond to it, is the child getting away with it? But they're not. We're just not choosing to engage with the invitation to escalate into arguments, to escalate into negative cycles that are neither good for the child nor the parent. So we're actively choosing not to respond and to resist engaging in escalating arguments. And if the child is active, then the parent is actively resisting. So if the child is issuing the invitation, they're acting out, they're refusing to go to school, and they're giving us the invitation. Then
Trying to get a rise out of you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Trying to get you going.
Yeah.
Pressing your buttons.
Yeah. So if we can detract from the behavior that we're expecting from them, like going to school and things, then this is a great way to do it. So success is measured by the parent's behavior, not the child's. If the child continues to act out and things, success is measured by how well able you were to manage yourself, how well able you were able to resist that invitation to escalate in arguments and to go down to the level of maybe even violence, of shouting, roaring, name calling, putting down, because we as parents are often put to the pin of our collar. We're doing the best for our children and we're often under an awful lot of stress. So
yeah, especially now.
React rather than respond. So our goal for the program is not control, but change. It's not, we're not going to get control of the young person. We don't want it. We want to support them to get control of themselves, to learn emotional regulation, to learn about what values they have in life and how they act and behave that keeps them in line with what they want to do in life rather than going against it. Reconciliatory acts are acts that we use in the program where we just, without thinking too much about it, with no connection to the behaviors, we actually give the child something nice. We do something for them. It could be in the form of a little note in the lunchbox just to say, I love you. It could be a nice meal in the evening when they come home. So we ask you, how powerful is it if you have a young person that has been in school all day long, that has got in trouble for not having his homework because he can't sit down, because he threw the paper, because he started around the yard, to actually come home and someone do read something really, really nice for him, like even say, how are you? Will I do your favorite meal for you? Here's a little note to say that no matter how challenging things are, we love you unconditionally.
I really liked this bit.
Yeah.
The reconciliatory acts. One of the parents in a group we're doing at the moment described it as random acts of kindness for your child. And John, in your parenting book, you mention, what reminded me of it is you mentioned giving them a slice of cake when they have a friend over, serve cake. And I thought that's an act of reconciliation. Even if things have been really tough all week, they have a friend over, bring up cake and coffee. You know, because you know they'd like that, and their friend would like it, and it would be a nice experience for them.
Yeah, and it's also a great indication that the parent has moved on, that the parent is stuck in this, aggravated or negative position.
That's a good point.
And it's an indication of love as well, because kindness is really an indication of love as well, because it's about acceptance. But I think the main thing is it moves on, and it also makes the child feel very comfortable and sort of proud to be in the home. You know, if their friends are treated or whatever, like there's a whole lot of values and positives as a result of that type of thing. It's about sharing the home, and it's about welcoming people in, and then the child's friends, and the child is particularly proud of that and feels good. And I'm a great believer in that principle, that if
power in a bit of cake.
Good, they're a lot easier to get on with it. When they're not feeling good or they're feeling angry, that the difficulties arise.
Mm.
And we'll cross over it later on. This program is all about the connection with the young person, making that connection, communicating with them, communicating when the iron is cold, not when it's hot. So that's where our nice acts that build the confidence, the self-esteem, that let them know, despite the behaviors, despite the challenges, that they are loved unconditionally. And it actually, like John says, helps the parents to move on, because they now recognize it is the behavior that's the problem, not the child. And the problem is the problem. This behavior we don't like, and this is what we're going to work on. That's the problem. The child is doing their best within the situation, and it's challenging on both sides. So then it looks at announcements and sits in. And again, as Maggie said earlier, there's lots of work and preparation for done around that. How do we as parents use strategies and tips and tricks to manage our own emotional regulation? If we can't figure out when we're off our baseline and what action we can take to bring us down a level or two in the baseline, how can we role model that for our children? How can we help them to emotionally regulate if we're not regulated ourselves? So by doing the active resistance, we look at the tools, wellness tools. How do we manage that? And it's individual to every single parent. What might work for me, what I always say is, please don't tell me count to 10. Please don't tell me count to 10 when I'm working.
Yeah, or take a deep breath. Good God. Don't tell me to relax. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, different things work for different people. So what we do through the courses from the very onset, the first session, we look at what is the wellness tool we as a group are going to practice tonight, because every parent coming to this program is coming with stressors. So we ground ourselves. We begin to regulate from the very, very start, and it might even be doing body scans. The last day we were actually doing jaw release and things. So
that was really funny.
We actually had a great laugh doing it.
Yeah.
Now, as your children get older, 12, 13, 14, it's not so easy to say, we'll practice mindfulness, we'll practice this, and we'll practice moving jaw muscles and things. But what we do is we can role model it for them. If we're sitting at the table and we find ourselves tense, I always say I must take off my earrings, my 2 shoulders to be stuck up to my ears. So even sitting at the table in front of them, doing these things, or you go into a bank and there's a queue and someone's shouting down and you're getting a bit worked up. Again, it's being able to open up and say, I am really slipping off my comfort zone here. My window of tolerance is slipping away. So I'm going to have to regulate myself and start. I won't count it in, but I'll start deep breathing, or I'll start counting shapes or something that helps me regulate and relax, so that I can be present at all times with my child. So what we're asking parents to do, and what it is, resisting against violence. So that is shouting, escalating arguments, it's calling names, it's putting me downs, which we know a lot of the time is done in the heat of the moment. And as a parent myself, I can honestly hold my hand up and say I've done it a good few times as well myself, and I wouldn't be proud of it. But the more courses I have done, the more training I did, the more I was able to parent better, and I was more available for my children. So we again resist against engaging in non-functioning. If there's school refusal, if there are people, teenagers refusing to get up out of bed, again, it's not reacting to it in the heat of the moment. It's not taking it up into escalating arguments. It's working on it when the iron is cold. So again, we're not going to get into it again about the disconnection, the social withdrawal, spending a load of time in the bedroom. For children with ASD, it might be that the connection is too hard for them, that when they do it, they get in trouble, or something goes wrong and the feedback isn't so nice and they're getting given out to, and these arguments. So they might go into avoidance strategy, which would be social withdrawal, going into their bedroom and living most of the time there. Now, teenagers have that tendency anyway, but again, we're not going to react against that and create more damage to the relationship with the child. So that's what we're committing to when we take on this program. Anyone want to add to that? Am I doing good all on my own?
Brilliant, Margaret. Yeah.
So whatever our family makeup is, unite. It's extremely important that parents come together and unite and parent together. Now, this program is very, very flexible. It accommodates parents parenting together. It accommodates lone parents. But what is also important is it accommodates separated parents, that although they may not be living together and parenting under the one roof, they're still parenting that child. So if 2 parents even come to the group and they learn similar strategies and they take away the strategies that work for them in each of their homes or the environments in which they have contact with their children, then it's huge. So again, unite parents together, even if they are separated, coming to the group. They don't have to work together or anything. They can come as individuals, but they will both be learning the tips, the tricks and the skills, and the approach from both parents will be reasonably similar. So that is much better for the young person. The support is joined up, and
it's so powerful. Then there isn't a good cop, bad cop dynamic going on. They're getting the same message from both parents.
That's it. And we're going to resist the violence, the shouting, the escalating arguments, the damaging the relationship. And it takes persistence. This is hard work. We're used to falling into patterns of behaviour. This happens, this is what we do, this happens. And I suppose, you know, it isn't until I've really done life coaching and things, I recognise how much of the same pattern is repeated all day long. It's familiar, it's like a sock. We get up, we just engage in it and we just do it. And parenting is very similar. We go to a parenting course and for 5 weeks we learn that ask the child questions to get their understanding of things rather than giving advice, telling them what to do and all that. But after 5 weeks, it kind of goes out the window again, and we actually go back into the same spiral of downward spiral of asking the questions, trying to dictate what they do or control outcomes for them, instead of stepping back, asking the questions and get to understand them. So persistence is huge. So what we're looking to, some parents have beautiful relationships with their children, so they're maintaining the relationships. They're preparing maybe for the teenage years when there might be a bit of rough and tumble, a bit of surfing, few waves here and there. But if the relationship is built from a very young age, it will make the waves and the rough and tumble an awful lot easier in the teenage years. But then we also have parents that have engaged in a lot of that escalating arguments and things. So there's a repair in the relationship there. We're repairing it. We're reaching out to this young person to support them, and we're recognizing with them that at times we haven't behaved as would be expected for a parent, that we have let ourselves down on occasion, that we've engaged in this dysregulated kind of argument and things. So then we're rebuilding with them. We're rebuilding that relationship, making home a nice, safe place for everyone to exist and function. Because I suppose when there is, particularly, there can be 2 or 3 children with similar behaviours in a home, but often it is one. And often they may be the scapegoat or what have you for a lot of the challenges in the family. And because they may have an extra dimension like ADHD or something, it's easy to focus in on that person. But all the people in the family are affected by this escalating arguments and things. And so we need siblings to rebuild relationships with siblings, and we need parents and the whole family to kind of regroup together under different rules and different way of existing and going forward. So what we're looking at here, the program, it's about maintaining, building and repairing the relationship with the child. It's not about managing behaviours, which general parenting programs focus on. This is the behaviour, we'll sort it out, we'll manage that. And it's about raising parental presence. When we are in the home with the child, if we're involved in escalating arguments, then we're not emotionally present for the child. We're not available. We're not a safe base from them to try out things, to question things, to get positive feedback from. If the children are out in the community and we've no idea where they are, what they're doing, or who their friends are, then we have absolutely no parental presence there. We might have children, when they're young, they have a huge parental presence in their head that guides their model behaviour, their standards, what they will and they won't do, because they're afraid, if I do that, mom will kill me, and if I do that, somebody else will be cross with me, and some of this. But sometimes for children that's involved in challenging behaviour and things, the parental presence, for whatever reason, is very low. They don't have that moral conscience of other people in their head helping them to behave appropriately. They kind of lose their understanding of how to behave appropriately. So the principles of the program are looking at de-escalation, baskets, supporters, reconciliation. You have announcement and the sit-ins. Now we'll go through them all a small bit further down the line again. Here we have the non-violent resistance approach. We have my own screen now is cutting off the top of this, but it stands for non-violent resistance, building on relationships through connection. It works with all children, whether it's children that need just generic parenting support, whether it's children with special needs, or children presenting with violent and aggressive behaviours. And its focus is on the relationship, building that, maintaining it, repairing it, and rebuilding again all the time. So we always start here with the first part of the program is looking after yourself. That's priority. We have to understand how to look after ourselves and care for ourselves well, so that we can resist the behaviours. Then we look at de-escalation, reconciliation gestures, which we have spoken about, baskets, supporters, announcement, sit-ins, and we briefly look at siblings. So what we're trying to do here is increase parental presence. We want warm and firm parenting. So we want it to be warm and friendly, but we want it also to be demanding and firm. There is an expectation that our children behave in a certain way, that they have values and social norms that get good outcomes for them. I have a huge hobby horse when I'm working with children is children shouldn't be out there in school achieving having a good day to keep mom happy. They're there to get the best outcome for themselves for the day. What is it that I'm learning here? What am I getting from this? Is it carrying me further down the road? Do I want to go to college? Do I want an apprenticeship? Do I want to be a chef? So again, it's about a good day is for the young person, not for them to keep mom and dad happy at home. So when we look at higher parental presence, it is kind of our center here of our model. And sometimes on the left, we have anything goes, permissive parenting. On the other side, we have super strict, it's authoritarian, whereas we want it here to be authoritative. There's loads of room for the child to grow and develop the skills that they need to go out in the world and have a good quality of life. And when we look at the skills, what we are looking at are problem-solving skills, connecting skills. How do you connect with other people? How do you have the conversations? How do you build your relationships? They're the most important things for children to learn in life. How do we learn about conflict resolution? If we look at the challenges that anybody could come up with it, bullying at work, not liking their job, trouble getting on with people at work, you have meeting professionals that they don't get on with, at school, bullies, challenging with homework, and dysregulation due to disability. It all revolves around connection and being able to communicate your needs, to understand them. So that's why we're very focused on problem-solving skills, conflict resolution skills, build and connecting. So this fits right in with our ethos on connecting with the young person, giving them the skills to move forward. So if we're always trying to fix things for them and come up with answers for them and solutions for them, then they don't learn those skills. And it doesn't help them, and it impedes with the relationship. So again, I have mentioned it earlier, so I'm just going to skim through this. We have physical, cognitive and emotional presence. The physical can often relate to a room in the house. What parts of our house do we avoid because we're afraid of a backlash from one of our children? Who commands the TV? Are the parents able to turn over to what they want to watch there? Are there parts of the house that you're kind of afraid to that somebody else has stated as their territory and you're keeping out of it for a quiet life? So that can be physical, but it can also be how when you're in the sitting room with the child, will you sit in the room with them? Do you like sitting in the room with them? When they're out about in the community, have you a bit of a physical presence as well? Like, maybe if they're out for 2 hours, you'll be coming back to them in 2 hours in the car to collect them. Now, I do know there are challenges around the COVID at the moment and young people going out meeting, but we're still looking at parental presence. When they're out there, how much in the child's head are the parents? Or are they completely and utterly outside the door gone and parental presence gone? Again,
is your connection with them still live? Is your connection with them still live, even though they're not physically with you? Yeah.
And cognitive is how much of the skills that we're teaching them are they carrying with them? About the problem solving, all those kind of things. This is what I worked out yesterday with mom, that if this happens, this is our strategy for dealing with it. And this is the problem, how am I going to do that? So no matter what corner they're backed into in life, they're able to problem solve and make decisions for better outcomes for themselves. So we're looking at emotional. How emotionally available are we for our children if we are in escalating arguments all the time? But if we're on our phone, if we're on Facebook, if we're on spending hours when our children are around us and we're with them and we're physically present, are we emotionally present? So again, they're all things that we look at. So I'm just looking here to see, they lose their sense of what is and what is not acceptable if the parental presence is not very strong in their life.
Yeah, because their own internal moral compass wouldn't be developed yet. So if they don't have you or your co-parent or both of you in the back of their heads, they can easily be influenced by their peer group or by whatever bad crowd they fall into if they're unlucky enough.
Yeah.
So you have to jostle for that space and stake your claim to it, a space in their mind.
Exactly. And so
Stand up for yourself.
For children that don't actually have parental presence, it can be a scary place for teens.
They can be vulnerable.
For children, because they have the skills and the capacity to actually manage these out-controlled behaviours, the draws from the groups outside and all that kind of thing. And so it makes them very insecure, dysregulated, and their window of tolerance goes from 0 to 100 very, very fast. They feel unsafe. I suppose we talk about children having a secure base from which children can explore their environment and come back.
Yeah.
That shifts a small bit when we're teenagers, but they still use us as a secure base. They still come back for 10 minutes here and there of input, of chat, of support, and that is testing what we can give them, how supportive we can be to them, whether whether we're actually going to spiel off our own stuff, whether they're going to get it given out to, whether they're going to be told what to do, but what they're actually asking for is just listen to me.
Will you still accept me?
Yeah. And I suppose I would argue that the number one thing that people carry to therapists is, I wasn't heard. I wasn't listened to. So, I mean, we have an opportunity for children to rear them being heard and being listened to. So they're huge factors in supporting young people to manage behaviours that are challenging. So when we're looking at parental presence in the context of ADHD and ASD, okay, so children with autism have social imagination deficits. So they're not able to weigh up 2 or 3 different scenarios at one time. So if they're hell-bent on going out playing with Tom and Jim, and the mother or the father has said you can't play with Jim because he's unlikely to be able to weigh up 2 or 3 choices. Now, again, that is a skill that can be learned, a muscle that can be developed. But again, it steps back into the parents sitting down with the child, doing a graph maybe, what are your options, what are your choices here? So we're expanding their window all the time of understanding that there are choices, they just need to work a bit harder around thinking about it. So impulsivity, again, some children with autism and some children with ADHD, they don't have the brakes. They don't have the brakes in slowing down to think things. A thought comes into the head, they're gone. The brakes just don't come on. Like most of us is start thinking of the consequences or parental presence coming ahead. The thought comes into their head, they've acted on it before they realize it, so they wind up in trouble. They have challenges with executive functioning, that is, a lot of sensory input coming in. If someone is shouting at them and there's a voice coming and they're looking at something and they're trying to do homework and things, they can't integrate that, and they can't integrate it to get a coherent output out of it. So again, there's challenges with the executive and sensory functioning. Tunnel vision. Young people with autism, once they get something in their head, it's very, very hard to change them out of it. But again, it's parental presence and teaching them from a very young age to think things out, even writing it down. So we do give different strategies and tools to parents so they can sit with the young people and help them to write out choices on what are the consequences of these behaviors and what will the impact be on us. So they might at the start do 2 different choices and come down and then say, this is what I'm going to do. So again, it's slow work, but it's not something that can be done in the heat of the moment. Window of tolerance is actually very low in children with autism and ADHD. So they can very easily go from 0 to 100 and there's no in between. So if their window of tolerance is low, and we as parents have a very low tolerance level, then you're going to have two that are going to be up around the sky, pie in the sky, very regular, and it's going nowhere, and it's not giving the child a secure base in which to come down and regulate themselves with and to work things out. So when tolerance levels are tested, yeah, that goes from high to low. So then they engage in self-destructive behaviours to cope with everyday life. So when you're looking at destructive behaviours, it can be just socially cutting themselves off, spending hours and hours in the bedroom. But you can also go to arguments, physical battles, you can go to self-harming, you can go drug-taking behaviours, drink-taking behaviours. They begin to engage in those behaviours to help them cope with everyday life. So they use the unhealthy coping mechanisms of disconnect or disassociate. I suppose, you know, we have a lot of young children with disabilities that find it very hard to get feedback from the extremities in their bodies. So if you spend all day long trying to actually hold your arms in and contain them so you can write with the pencil and do that, you know, sometimes they describe it as kind of an out-of-body experience. Everything is gone, it has just left, and they're not on the shell of a body that doesn't want to do anything. So we just disassociate, let things go on around us, and as if it was happening to other people.
And then they come home and it's a totally different story. Suddenly they're using their extremities a lot and they're bursting out when they get home. Someone in the Facebook group said that in their introduction, that they have a child that goes to school and behaves a certain way at school, and then when they get home it all comes flying out. You know, our kids can often contain themselves at school. They're so regulated at school, they have to be, and then at home where they feel safer, they can let it all hang out. And if as you said, if your window of tolerance is small, so if your comfort zone is easily knocked, it can lead for very stressful evenings.
Mm-hmm. So
the delights of homework.
Yeah. Again, when that young person comes home, if we're aware of them needing that space, aware of them getting that body feedback and things, it's like Maggie said, developing a tolerance to it, resisting the urge to correct them for every little thing they do.
Seeing it coming.
Yeah. So they need that space. They have spent a whole day trying to contain themselves, trying to gather themselves to actually work and to organize themselves, not to mention sit down for 6 hours a day in a classroom when they were in classrooms, but now they're all on Zoom. So there's an awful lot there around the self-regulation. So perceived dangers where there is none. I suppose we all have a tendency to have inner talk that can talk us up into a higher emotional level, or can talk ourselves down into a very kind of depressed level. And what we think affects our behavior. So I actually have the cognitive behavioral triangle down below, so I'll just explain that a bit. How are we doing for time, Maggie?
We're running on, Margaret. We are running on. So let's keep her moving. I'm Margaret's timekeeper. Let's keep it going there, Margaret.
What I'm looking at here is these are some of the tools we use. We introduce them to work with parents. What's my emotional gear stick look like, and who is driving it? Do I say you made me angry, you upset me? We teach no. You can choose how to respond and to react in any situation. You drive your own gear stick. Don't give that power to anyone else. So we look at inner dialogue. What's our talk like? We can talk ourselves into fear, worried about what might happen tomorrow, what might happen yesterday. And a lot of children with extra needs have that inner dialogue and self-talk that doesn't contribute to well-being.
Yeah, it can be really negative.
Debilitating. Yeah. So here we have it. We teach thoughts happen, they dictate our feelings, and then our out behavior. So if we change our thoughts, our feelings are different in our behaviors. So in any given situation, it's the thought that's going to create the behavior and things, not what the other person does, but how we think around it. So then here we're looking at escalating arguments. I love this, and I always say to parents, it takes two to argue. So hang up your gloves and stay out of the boxing ring. It's not good. It doesn't help. It just makes things worse. So you look at escalating arguments can be when the child starts roaring and the parents start roaring, and they go on and on and on. but we have given in escalation, whereas the child kicks off and starts looking for this and this, and after a few arguments or whatever, your parents say, oh, go on, have it so, if that's the way it's going to be. So that's giving in escalation. So we learn de-escalation, learn to resist the invitation to engage in an argument, learning to stay outside the boxing ring. And we're looking at deferred responses. We're not saying don't deal with it. We're saying come back when the iron is cold and we can deal with it then. And we'll choose what we deal with. So again, we're looking at reconciliation gestures. We have already covered
this. Is our random acts of kindness. Yeah, we've covered these.
There are two things I want to point out. How powerful is that for a child that has a lot of challenges and things, to be actually working with their parents to cook something nice? How powerful is it if a parent sat with a child in a room and actually asked them to teach me how to play that game on the Xbox?
That was me this week. Yeah.
So they're very powerful. It's time with your child, getting an interest in what they're doing, despite all the challenges that are going on, that he make time. How powerful is it for a young fella that has a challenging day at school all week to come home to his favourite meal being put up on the table to him? And we expect nothing in return. We're just demonstrating the fact that we love them despite all the challenges. So then what we ask parents to do is make a list of the many behaviours that challenge them, that really challenge them. So then we ask them to divide them into 3 different baskets. Only 1 or 2 go in the red one, 1 or 2 go in the orange, and all the rest go in the green. So we focus on the behaviour, either 1 or 2, the most important one. And if there is violence towards other siblings in the family, that has to be a behaviour that always goes in a red basket. So that's the behaviour that the parents on the course choose to deal with, strategies and tips to manage that. So for once they have it done once or twice, they have the model and they have the methods for doing it for other behaviours. Then we put 1 or 2 baskets in behaviours in the middle basket where we are willing to negotiate. Then all the rest of the behaviours go in the green basket and we choose not to respond to them. We're going
for now.
Yeah, we can go back to them. Now, I like this one here with the purse. Every now and then we need to put something in that. All the things that I like about my child. Also,
lose sight of them. If you're in a series of conflicts and argy-bargy, you can lose sight of what you like about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also parents can use that to write a note about their successes and they can bank it all up. So this is our purse. It just reminds us that our children are wonderful beings as well. It's the behavior that's not acceptable. So what we do is we look at we build a support network. That again is very individual to the families. We find that when people bring in supporters outside and they break the silence, it often moves the behaviours an awful long way on.
Having someone to talk to as a parent in difficulty, it's so powerful.
Yeah. So we build that supporters network, but again, it's individual to the family.
Yeah.
And that's just what a map of supporters may look like. Everybody's is individual. Some may not have as many supports as that on it. But again, it's what can we ask these people to specifically do with us to support us as we work through this program or going forward to help support this young person. It's building a village around our young person. So the announcement again is when we actually write down in the program what behaviours we're going to resist, and we're going to make that announcement to the young child. This behaviour is not acceptable and we're working towards stopping it.
Change is gonna come, like the song says.
What?
Change is gonna come. I would sing it, but I daren't.
So again, we look at the announcement of the problem-solving model because you have children with severe behaviours that may need a firmer announcement done with them, but you also use it as a problem-solving model. In the heat of the moment, resist the invitation to escalate. Revisit the incident when the iron is cold, explain how you felt about it, ask how it felt for the young person. Announce the behavior, name it, and you say it won't be tolerated, and snowstorm with the teenager to find solutions for going forward. Here there may be an opportunity for skills teaching. If there's no solutions, give time and space to think about it, reconvene again and discuss again. So you're agreeing a plan of action for going forward.
That's one aspect I really like, that you give them a chance to have part ownership of the solutions that are going to be tried out.
Yeah.
You know, that you're not just coming in going, there's going to be change and this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. You're going, look, this needs to change. What are we going to do together? You're co-creating these solutions and giving the young person a chance to take part.
And even if the solution that the young person comes up with, you believe won't work or it won't be effective, still try it with the young person.
You might be wrong.
A week later, and review said this didn't work very well. How can we tweak it? Because we're teaching the skill. How can we tweak it? How can we do it better? What more supports need to be put in here so we can stop this? So it's not about that it has to fix the problem, but how powerful is it for the child to hear a parent say, we'll try it.
Yeah, and we won't stop trying. We won't give up until we have a better way forwards.
Exactly. So the sit-ins then again, if there are extra challenging behaviours, we might have to sit in with the young person and ask them to come up with solutions. They may or they may not come up with a solution, but again, we sit for a small amount of time, then we leave and we come back and revisit again. We're asking the young person, we have announced this behaviour is going to stop, and we're asking them to work with us for a solution for moving it forward so things are better for everyone. So again, it's called the sit-in. So then the siblings and the non-VR, it can be adapted for all the siblings, because I believe this is a parenting program that is as generic as it is for those with challenging behaviour. Because
it really is, yeah. It works for everybody.
It's based on building that relationship. So I can adapt it for every person in the family and all the siblings. If there is violence between the siblings, then that behaviour must be put in the red basket. That's non-negotiable, because the protection of the other siblings in the house, especially underage, is of utmost importance. It can be used to address sibling rivalry that includes aggression and violence. Reconciliation gestures can be agreed between siblings, and siblings can become supporters if they're older. They can shift in to support either the young person or the parents or other members of the family. So siblings as victims, then we have to look at that. That impacts on the health and well-being of young people. So we have to take that into consideration and talking with them, sitting with them, helping them to deal with it. But we may need outside help there around a bit of counselling or therapy or support for the children. But again, that's for parents to decide. So the programme, it creates a calm and stable atmosphere in which slowly new pathways can develop. It improves family relationships. It promotes a safer, more secure environment for all the children to flourish in. It improves quality of life for all the family. It restores confidence in your parenting ability. It reduces the sense of helplessness. It repairs the relationship with your child. It helps the child to regulate better and make better decisions in life. Now, I'm going to hand that over to you, Karen. I'm very sorry, I probably went on a bit. How are we on time, Maggie?
It is coming up to 8:45.
Yeah.
Do you want to go back to the outcomes slide there a minute, Margaret? Because really, Karen, what we'd love to hear about is what were the outcomes of the programme for you? What made you join an NVR programme in the first place? And how did it go? Like, what was the outcome? What was the impact of the programme for you and your family?
Yeah, for me, I found I found it a very good course to do. I'm a single parent and my child has a kind of ADHD. So we can go to 0 to 100 in like that. I found it very good. It teaches you how to find it very good about, first of all, self-care for myself and how to manage my own kind of emotions. And it was a great reminder that, you know, I need to look after myself first, before I can really give 100% to anybody else.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, so, and then, yeah, I think one section we kind of went through different ways of doing that. So like I do counselling every 2 weeks and I go for walks and I do mindfulness. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, I definitely found it's really helped in that aspect. And then and then I have more energy to kind of manage at home by myself.
Yeah, you're not pouring from an empty jug, as they say.
Yeah. And then the random act of kindness kind of aspect of it, it was very good. So, you know, like, you know your kids so well, you know what they like, you know, and so use it as like it's a tool. Like, my kid loves a cookie flavored milk in the shops. Every now and again I just buy it for him, and he's like, do you know, I think it's just really good bridge that they know that, like, no matter what their behavior, you love them equally in every way.
Good day or bad day.
And having that conversation with him, and saying that to him, like, they really appreciate that. I never really I did kind of the work of the sit-in and the announcement. I did all that work, but I never actually did it, because I found that all the other kind of tools that I did before that just kind of built that bridge and built that bit of gap that we were struggling with. So I definitely found that it worked. But but even the work I did on the sit-in, it's definitely something that I have, that I know I can do if there ever was, you know, something. And and it definitely teaches you about empathy towards your kid. You know, really feel like, you know, getting into what they're going through, rather about me. It's not about me. Their feelings aren't about me. Their feelings are about them and what they're going through. So it's a really good reminder of that. And kind of, you think back on your own teen, when you were a teen, how hard and how strange the world is, trying to figure stuff out right until your kind of early 20s. So so
thanks, Karen. That's really good to hear that it brought you all those things.
And
empathy is a really good
trying to find, because I wouldn't have that many supports from family, so it kind of helped me think out of the box when I kind of needed to think of my support network.
To look at where else you might be getting support.
So like I link in with the local family resource centre, and that they offer me counselling. And then I have my sisters in the UK, and my son's very close to her husband, so he actually rings Tristan now kind of once a week and checks in on him. So it's kind of, so he feels he has somebody else to talk to as well. Brilliant. So kind of made me think kind of like a little bit out of the box, you know, like the support network I have is over in the kind of the UK, so how can I get them to support me? So
how can you draw on that?
That was, I think it's really nice for him as well as myself. So
that sounds really positive.
So like we still have blowouts, but
I
know how, like, I'm a very calm person anyway, but definitely that having more self-care meant that, you know, I was stronger, and I was able to kind of go, okay, well, I'm going for my run, or I'm going for my walk, and you know, all that kind of stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for talking us through all of that. We really appreciate you coming on, because there's nothing like direct experience of the program to speak to people who might be thinking, oh, I wonder, is it for me? Is it for us? Is it going to help?
No, I would definitely recommend doing the program. I found it very good.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions? I can't really think of anything else to say.
I think that's great. You've really explained it well, and I love hearing that it's having a lasting effect on the way you do your parenting, you know, and the way you live your life. I think no greater add really could we have that you have these ongoing supports in place, a counsellor and your various contacts in your support network, and that you're prioritizing your self-care so that you have more headspace to deal with the tough days when they happen. Sure, of course they're going to happen. It's life.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you so much. Margaret, do you have any other questions for Karen?
What advice would you give parents thinking about this programme? Would swing it for you or not?
What advice? Yeah, well, just this course really makes you think about yourself and how you can work on yourself. That makes you a better parent for your kid. So it's, yeah, I find it kind of gets you to step out of that big bubble. Sometimes you're in like this fire, so it just almost, you take a step out of the house, and because you're with other parents, you see it from the other angles, and you're problem solving in different ways. You know, that's the saying, like, you know, the sign of madness is if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're still gonna have the same outcome. So it kind of gets you to step out and go, okay, well, what I'm doing is not working. So how do I look at it in loads of different angles? And it is good doing it with other parents, because you do feel like you're not alone.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I find that can be challenging. You feel like, oh my God, you know, everybody else has a perfect family, like, you know, but then it's like, no, not everybody has a perfect family, you know. So yeah, it's good to hear other stories. So yeah, again, that part is helpful. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Karen.
All right, no problem.
John, you've dealt with a lot of less than perfect families in your time, I'm sure. What do you think, having looked through the details of the NVR program now, what are your thoughts? How do you think it harmonizes with your parenting philosophy? Because I would see that there's quite a lot of overlaps.
Yeah, very much
What are
so.
your thoughts?
Very much so. I'm very impressed. I suppose one of the things I would say from my own experience with that type of content, any course you'll do, not just as a parent, but as a human being, you'll benefit from that. And you'll benefit, as Karen said, for the interchange and interaction between other parents. We all learn from one another. So I'd be totally supportive of the principle of it, and of helping people develop skills and tactics and strategies that will relieve particularly stress in their lives, because anywhere there's stress, there's damage. There's no question. There's damage to the child and there's damage to the parent. And so we must try to reduce as much as possible stress. So I have a few, overview things that I think I always say that when I'm doing little parenting talks. The first thing I always say is that I'm a grandparent now of 10, 11. And what I say quite honestly is that I'm way, way better now as a parent. I know it's a different role now, but I mean, I'm far better now able to cope with grandchildren than I ever was with my own children. And it's down to experience, and it's down to wisdom. And a lot of people, and most people, have never been really prepared for parenthood at all. Any of us. You just get the baby and you scratch your head and you say, where do I go? Usually terrified of what's going to happen next. And we battle along, and because we're young often then as parents, and we don't want to hear advice from other people, even our own parents, right? Naturally, and because we want to be able to prove that we're able to do it. And we make a lot of mistakes and we do a lot of damage. And as you get older and as you mature, you begin to realize, God, there's a better way. And a lot of the better way is in your program. Because I'm sure that's also developed from the wisdom of people over the years, getting the benefit from it. So I'd say to people listening, irrespective of what course you're going to do, or irrespective of what else has happened, the one thing you must accept from day one is a human change is very slow, very difficult, and very frustrating. It's natural. So, and that must apply to you as the parent, but it equally must apply to the child. It takes time, and we will regress. We'll go back. We'll forget. And one of the things Margaret made a point of was that when you recall again that you have made a mistake, or that you have gone the wrong direction, to recognize that is brilliant, because that's going to prevent you going down that road again. And one of the things I often say is that we are far more likely to look at things when they go wrong. I'd be advocating very, very strongly that we also equally take the time to look at things that go well and ask, why did that go so well today? And I bet you'll find that your own contribution was the most significant part of it. And we're often very slow to sort of acknowledge that God, I did that well. Like the old thing of self-praise is no praise. That old rubbish that was indoctrinated into people for centuries. And self-praise is no praise. Self-praise is very important. It's very important if you handle a situation very well and you come out at the other end, that you say, well, God, I did well. And why did I do well? Because this is what happened. And because I think we lose a lot of the learning that we should get from successful things, because we're always told, oh, when things go wrong, you learn from things going wrong. You do, of course, but we can learn from things that go right as well. The little bit about self-care, I'm big into that, and Karen mentioned it, and I'd be saying to people, absolutely crucial. Don't apologize for self-care, looking after yourself. You cannot deal with the stresses of parenting if you don't feel good. And a few things I'd say, sleep is so important. If you don't sleep, and if you have difficulty with sleep, will you do something about it? There's lots of different techniques and advice out there on websites and on all sorts of things. You don't have to go to the doctor to get sleeping pills or something. There's lots of little techniques that you can get to help you get a better night's sleep. If you get up in the morning after a good night's sleep, aren't you 100% more energetic and capable of dealing with challenges than if you get up tired and burned out? And so therefore I'd say it's a top priority when you go to bed to sleep, and don't be bringing social media with you, and don't be looking at Facebook at 4 o'clock in the morning, killing yourself. Because over a period of time, lack of sleep will absolutely burn you out, make you irritable, give you short temper, you'll get aggressive. There's so many different elements up to it. Sleep, and I know diet is very important. I'm not going to mention diet because everyone knows about diet, but how important it is. But exercise is also so important, and getting out of that house. I'd be saying, if you can at all, if you can arrange it at all, you must get out of the house and go for a walk or do something. And I know it's very difficult at the moment, but we're talking about a very unusual period at the moment that won't be with us forever. But in normal times, getting out of the house, even at the moment, is psychologically, it is so important. So the better you look after yourself, the better you'll be able to cope. And you'll find the better you'll handle situations as well. Because if you're in good form and in good humor, a lot of things that will drive you crazy when you're in bad humor will rub off you and just drip off you when you're in good humor. You're go end up in 9. So anyway, just that little bit is very good. Change is slow, and you will regress. So will the child regress. It's all about understanding. And one of my bits of philosophy is every day is a new day. Every day is a new opportunity. And don't be going back to yesterday. You're very good today, but you are terrible yesterday. Deal with today, and that's it. Put it in the envelope or in the weather, and it's gone. Because if we keep going back all the time and bringing negativity into positivity, or balancing positivity with, but you weren't so good yesterday, and we're inclined to do that sometimes. I haven't forgotten. Well, do forget. There's no point in deal with it and forget it and move on, because there's nothing as demoralizing as a child coming home after having a bad day today or yesterday and running in the door today saying, look what I did today, and the ground taken from under him, but saying, yeah, but you weren't, so I haven't forgotten yesterday. So, and that's us, and that's why there's so much emphasis on this program on parents. I always say, I've always been saying this, and it's very much part of what you're saying. Parents must always remember that their reaction is generally what sets the next stage. So if we react badly or negatively or aggressively, you can be certain that you're going to facilitate a further, a reaction of aggression and all that. Equally, if we're calm and if we're divert stuff and if we're relaxed stuff, your reaction generally dictates what happens next. That's a great responsibility, but it's also a great control factor to be conscious that if I don't react, so how I react and how I respond, listening, I just mentioned listening has been mentioned all the time, and hearing. A few little things about that is just because you listen to the child and make sure you hear the child, because we are great at listening but poor at hearing, and there is a difference. The hearing bit is that we actually register, we can empathize and we can understand, and but hearing the child and listening to the child does not mean agreeing with the child. And that is very important. So if the child is saying something, even criticizing another parent, your fellow parent, for instance, or the teacher, it doesn't mean you're agreeing with him because you listen to what he's saying. But you're listening simply to give the child the opportunity of unloading the stuff. And then it is your way of dealing with it that's important. What are you going to say about it? How are you going to deal with the criticism of mom or the criticism of dad? In terms of, so don't assume that just because you hear the child, that's automatically agreeing with the child. So that's very important, but it is very important that as your children get older, it's more and more important to listen to and to accept and acknowledge their differences from you. So they may be they may be saying things to you that you totally disagree with. There's a way and means, as the course says, of dealing with that. There's a way of coming around to it. The timing is 90% of it. There's no point in doing it, as you say in the course, when people are all aroused or when they're, and maybe I make this point as well. If a child gets into a real state of aggression and loses the plot almost, don't assume that child has calmed down because he's sitting down on the chair. And I could take a whole day or 2 days for that child to come back to normality again, because his brain is all over the place. So after 10 minutes going in and, he's cooled down now. No, he's not. Maybe wait until tomorrow with the whole thing and pick your time. I'd say stop staring at children. I am always saying that. Don't be staring at your child. And that's one of the most intimidating things we do. We start to look at him in the eyeball and say, will you tell me? Why would he tell you? He's terrified of you. Sometimes going for a little walk is great with a child. You can't stare at them when you're walking. Going for a cycle. When you're driving in the car, food sometimes, when you're having the lunch, can often be a lovely little time to bring up something. Say, by the way, yesterday, talk about your feelings. Hugely powerful. Nobody can really argue when you say, I feel so sad today. I really feel angry. I really feel so let down. I am. So you're talking about your feelings to your child. So you're acknowledging that I'm feeling happy. I'm happy today. Why are you happy, Mom? Because. Now you're talking about, but equally, because we're inclined to, and Margaret brought it up and I just want to endorse it, we're inclined to, you are driving me mad. No, you're not. The child isn't driving you mad. You're driving yourself mad by the reaction you are to what the child is doing. So it's very important. So you can, it's quite okay for me anyway to say, I feel really, really tense as a result of all that noise. I really feel upset because of because nobody can disagree with you. You're making
it's great role modeling.
It's fantastic role model. And remember that, very important to remember that. You are your child's greatest and most significant role model.
Mm-hmm.
Most behavior,
like it or not,
learned. Just come by nature. It's learned. And who is it learned from? It's learned, fortunately, from us.
Yes, you hear your own voice echoing back at you.
I had lots of when my children got older, that was thrown back at me, rightly so, several times. Do as I say, not as I do. And you don't do that yourself. And when kids say that to you, it's a real eye opener, because it's nearly always true. So
you had a story in your book about teaching your daughter to drive, and she said, you never stop at that sign. I didn't realize I had to stop there.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was very funny. Like, maybe if you stopped there, I would know to stop there.
Listen, another thing that I learned as a grandparent now for my daughter rather than myself, because I never came across it myself, but my daughter would say was just 2 boys, and 10 and going on 11 and 8 going on 9. And she's at this stage, eventually she got to know this, that with the child, sometimes the child doesn't know when he's thirsty, and he doesn't know when he's hungry, and he sometimes doesn't know when he's tired. But if he's hungry, for instance, or if he's thirsty, sometimes they don't actually realize. The reason I'm absolutely cantankerous and difficult and awkward and is because I'm actually hungry. And she has found that sometimes like that, she gets him to eat something or to drink something up, and the behavior almost instantly changes. So it's just, again, to be aware of, sometimes even at 9 and 10 and 11, children don't know that actually the problem is hunger or thirst or tiredness. And again, there's no point in, if you're a tired child, if you have a hungry child, if you have a thirsty child, you're beating your head up the wall trying to force them to do things. So it's that little bit, those little things are very important. The last little thing I'd say in terms of silence, two little things. Silence. Don't be afraid of silence. Silence is absolutely powerful, but we're uncomfortable. Like if we're chatting to the child and there's silence, or if the child is telling us, I always say to people, if your child comes to you, when your child comes to you to unload, will you give them 100% attention, and don't interrupt them, and don't start telling them, finishing up the sentences for them. And if there's a period of silence, will you leave the silence? Because the child might be trying to think up a way of saying it, or trying to get his head or her head around the thing. And here we are. Or don't dismiss them. Oh, that's nothing. Sure, why that? You'll grow out of that. That is very insulting to say that to a child that feels really that this is huge. So the way to do it is to acknowledge, yeah, I hear, I know, understand your hurt, I understand you feel very anxious and all, whatever. But once you acknowledge, it's a wonderful recognition of the child. And the final little thing I'd say is around problem solving. Don't solve your children's problems for them. Help your children to solve their own problems. And I'll finish off with a little story that I tend to highlight this, because it is very important that children realize that their decisions will have repercussions. Whatever their decisions are, they'll have some repercussions, so that they learn, maybe if I do this, I have to do that without that, or vice versa. And I give the little example that if you give your child every week €5 as pocket money, and you're going along grand, and this particular Friday you're handing the $5, or the little girl the $5, and say, that's for your pocket money for the weekend, and they say, listen, oh God, I have a problem this weekend. What is it? Well, listen, I have to get such and such a book. And look, it's just a comic or whatever it is, girls, whatever it is, I have to get it. How much is it? $4.99. Well, sure, you have the money. Yeah, but isn't it Grand's birthday as well? Oh my God, it is. Grand's birthday is that Sunday. Do I have to buy her a present? Oh God, I'd say it'd be a good idea. Gee, because you can't go up on Sunday to see Grand on her birthday without something. Don't buy a present for that child now to give to Grand. Let him stew. He'd either get the comic and bring nothing to Gran, or he gets a little present for Gran and he does it out the comic. Why? Because you're training the child to make decisions and to take responsibility. It's a lovely little way. Or you find his homework or her homework on the sitting room table in the box. Don't get into the car and rush into the school. Leave it there. Don't run in a back window and hand in the homework in the back window. Don't tell the teacher. Sure, he'll never grow. He'll never take responsibility. So he'll say, Dad will do that, Mum will do that. So I know it's tough, but as we said, Margaret said it, we say it regularly, sometimes you have to be tough, and sometimes no means no. You can explain it, but no means no, because they do need, I believe, they do need the security and the confidence that comes around structure and reliability. So that Mum and Dad are reliable, and sometimes Mum and Dad and parenting is not about popularity. We have to be unpopular at times as well. That is part of the whole responsibility. Sometimes I hate you, Mum. Well, so sorry. They used to say that to me, and I used to say, well, if you can get anyone better, off with you. And then so, but sometimes you have to say, no, sorry, no, I'm not going. You're not going out tonight. That's it. Sorry. You can explain why they're not going out tonight, but they're not going out tonight, and that's it. And so you're helping them actually to make decisions and to realize that when if I'm going to do this, well, I'll have to do without that. And that is actually training them and helping them for right through to life When they go to third level and when they're away from local area and your house and all the supports they have there, and when they're down in Limerick, like last night in university, or when they're up in Galway, they have to stand on their own feet and make independent decisions. Will I go to a party during lockdown, or will I stay at home? And we are helping them actually to make those sound decisions by training them from a very young age to make, and maybe then finally, one of the little things I'd say is, well, and to in your program a lot, and that is to divert and to offer choice. It's fantastic. Even the small little child, will you wear your black shoes or your red shoes? Which, in other words, you're wearing some shoes, but we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Or white shoes. But wear your black shoes. I don't like your black, well, you're wearing them. Well, that's not learning the child anything. It's actually illustrating a bully. That is, you're in charge. And what you're doing is, there's little tactics like that. Would you like to, do this now, or will you like to do it in an hour's time? Will you have your tea first and do your homework, or will you do your homework first to have your tea? That's a lovely option to give a child. So you're giving the child some say, but they're still doing the homework and they're still getting their tea. What difference does it make to you whether they do one or the other? So choices, but what choices does is it gives people the feeling I'm in charge. And every human being loves to be in charge.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's powerful. John, I wanted to just ask you there in relation to, we're in the lockdown now and all we hear is the education, the Leaving Cert and all that, but I see it as a fabulous opportunity where life has slowed down so much, that there's so much opportunities within family for this talk and this discussion, this connecting, this being together in silences and all that kind of thing. But it's very rarely the focus of parents' interests or what it's not that they don't see it as important, but I suppose they view where children go in life, what college they go to, the job they get. But it's leaving out the problem solving, the connecting, how they'll deal with ups and downs in life all along, which are probably 10 times more important than any job you'll ever have.
Yeah, and I suppose again, it happens when you're young like that, young, and parents I'm talking about now, and you have teenagers and all that sort of thing. You see, we over worry about them, you see, and we think that it's the end of the world if they don't do this and they don't do that, and if they don't, and we nearly tell them what to do, like, and you have to do a certain course, and if you're going for a low points course, there's no good in that type of stuff. We nearly decide their lives for them, not realizing that you're talking about a person's future, about their happiness, about their contentment. And you're dead right. Like if we get the foundations right, like, and this is why you are writing your program to say, like, if at all possible, when you're starting off with the 2-3-year-old, if you lay all those lovely little foundations at that stage, and 90% of it as they get older, I'm absolutely certain of this, 90% of it will fall into place. Like if you listen to your child, if you chat to your child and listen to what they say, if they feel they can talk to you about anything and that they're free, all those that are wonderful things. I believe that it's us parents that stop teenagers communicating rather than the other way around because of our reaction. Our reaction, what do you do that for? And we jump on the chair or we shout. Sure, of course the message is, we're not going any further there. I'm not telling Dad anymore. So Dad is a lunatic. The number of children that told me that, and they were talking to a lunatic, so they knew. But the number of teenagers that said, I couldn't tell Dad because he's a lunatic. Well, Dad wasn't a lunatic, but Dad reacted like a lunatic. And as a result of that, then there was no communication. So a lot of this time at home is invaluable to build up that sort of little playtime. Reading as well. I should have said that as well. God, with technology now, it's nearly run out of being so. But gee, from 2 years on, or a year and a half onwards, read. It's fantastic for relationships. Lying on the bed, sitting on the bed, half an hour before the child goes to sleep. Listen, you can't buy that. That is what I call quality time. Even as a teenager, darken down your lights, you'll be surprised some of the things that they'll start telling you at 10 o'clock or half 10 at night. No, not all the time, but it's just that, that relaxed period where they can tell you stuff. There's no reaction. That's develop bonds as well. And you'll be surprised, and it is a short period as well to reassure parents, honestly. I say children are grown up too quick. And nowadays from about 10 or 11 onwards, most children, as a parent, you're in embarrassment and you know nothing. How often did they tell you that? How would you know? You know nothing. And I used to say to them, sure, how would I know? Sure, Jesus, I only came from Tipperary. And they actually believe that. But then maybe when they're 19 or 20, what did they start doing? Come and asking you for your advice. I'd say, what do you think, Dad? And I used to say to him, have I an opinion? Colin, that's brilliant. But you know, so it's a short window really when there's this sort of difficulty. Remember what they're trying to do though? They're trying to establish their independence. That's all they're trying to do, which is a necessity for life. And so don't be offended. They'll come back, and they'll probably come back too much. And they'll be back again and you'll be saying, geez, that dog was rid of you. And they'll be asking you to go to town or something. They'll be asking you what sort of a shirt or what sort of a blouse will I buy. Listen, it's a short period and just tolerate it as best you can. Because when you come out at the other end, that's the really enjoyable bit, when they're sort of more friends now than children. And they'll always remember, as I always say this as well, it's very important as well, be very careful with the criticism thing. Because, you know, you can correct children, you can suggest things, be very careful with the criticism thing. And don't ever put down your child, put down, you know, hurtful comments. And in the program, I just want to interrupt. A child will never forget a hurtful comment by two separate people, groups of people. The most important people in the child's life are the parents. Hurtful comment from teachers is never forgotten. And the second group are teachers. I'm always saying to teachers, never pass a hurtful comment to any child, because that child will remember it to his or her grave. And I think people listening tonight can remember that. A teacher that said something derogatory or hurtful, you'll never be good for nothing. You'll be working on the road. Who would ever give you a job? You'll
never be as good as your sister.
Never be comparisons, which are disastrous. No comparisons, no, even in your own family. All your children are completely unique and they're different. And isn't it great to have them different? You don't want 6 or 7 little robots all the same. And therefore, it is very hurtful as well to be comparing. You look at Mary, how great she is. And look at they're all different, and respect each one of them for what they are. It's about actually acknowledging and accepting your children's reality, whatever they are. Some of them are tall, some of them are small, some of them are very bright academically, some of them are very creative, some of them are very sporting. They all have their own little gifts, by the way, every single one of them. Acknowledge that. And as Margaret said in her introduction, don't be favouring one against the other. You have to be neutral. There's no such thing as a favourite son or a favourite daughter. And we know in families there are, but that's very hurtful. If there's a favourite child, so when you're giving jobs out or when you're doing anything, make sure you spread them around and demonstrate that you love all each one of them equally.
Then not one child gets all the cake.
Yeah.
So I suppose I'm very conscious of the time. I'd love to go on for another hour.
We've gone over a bit.
All of us could stay here talking about parenting forever. But I really enjoyed the night, but I want to apologise for those watching for our late start and the problem with the technical difficulties. And I want to say thanks very much to Karen for joining us. And
yes, thank you so much, Karen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you to Maggie for joining with us.
My pleasure.
So now I'm hopefully going to be able to end this properly.
John, off for tea and cake. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I love your parenting book. You're a bit of a hero for me. Yeah. So I got away. They say you should never meet your heroes, and I got away with virtually meeting you tonight.
Yeah,
despite our difficulties at the beginning.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks very much.